we are clear, I would like to reintroduce Paris Hatcher, a leader whom I trust, a scientist whose analysis I follow, and a courageous actor who be outside for our freedom. Welcome to the stage, Paris Hatcher, founder and leader of
this incredible keynote. It is not very often that you get to be in conversation with someone who has shaped your worldview and has served as a possibility model for a life of activism, deep commitment to liberation, and Black feminism. To say that I am elated is an understatement. In these times, I have been looking for advisement, for assessment, for direction. Aren't we all? Especially in these times when we know that we have so much uncertainty, a disjointed left, global genocides, the techno-oligarchs are beefing online, destroying the world, and rising fascism. To be clear, there was one person I wanted to hear from. I wanted to hear from Angela Davis. We all have different entry points with this revolutionary. Some of you may have been friends for a really long time. Some may have worked on the campaign to free her. Some may have gotten familiar with her through her autobiography or reading many of her books, being provoked and charged by her speeches. We have been in awe of this revolutionary. So today, I am grateful to be in conversation with prison abolitionist, scholar, freedom fighter, lover of the people, Black feminist revolutionary, Angela Davis. Please welcome Angela Davis to
that I've never done anything by myself. So before we get started, I wanted to tell you that I had a conversation with my old friend Erica Huggins, my comrade sister Erica Huggins. We've known each other since the 60s, and I was saying, you know, Erica, we're among the survivors, and we're representing for all of those who didn't make it this far. Hey, Billy. I just noticed you.
Yes. Billy Avery, the starter of the movement, a part of my tradition of reproductive justice. She is the mother of reproductive justice. There would be no without the genius of Billy Avery. So excited to honor all three of y'all tonight.
Let me just say, I know that Alexis DeVoe is being honored.
Yes, she is being honored tonight too.
And there's Alexis over there.
Oh,
And she is clearly with us, particularly at this moment, in the campaign to generate more and more solidarity for Palestine. She was the first.
Yes, she was
the first.
Yes, yes, thank you for that grounding. It's so important. I think your work means so much because you have really exemplified what it means to live a life of purpose on purpose. And you were charged with a revolutionary commitment to the freedom of our people by any means necessary. You really have lived into that and continue to live into it. And we just want to thank you so much for that. And I know it's easy for people to want to pedalize you. And so I want to give you your honor and respect, because I really do believe in doing that. And I want to be willing to engage with you. You down for that? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really, I think all of us want to hear your thinking and, you know, provoke us to think differently. Yeah. So I want to first start with something to just, you know, we were talking a little bit backstage. I found out something about you that was truly delightful for me. But you have lived a life that's been really public and not always by your own design. And you offered your life as a testimony of activism. And I'm thinking, because you've shared so much about your life, what is something that most people wouldn't know about you that isn't so readily available in the books and the speeches? A fun tidbit around you. Do you want to share your sign? What's your sign? Are you into astrology?
You know, we had this wonderful conversation about dogs, so that's a whole other issue. But you know something? I used to ride with the Oakland Yellow Jackets. And what was so wonderful about that was that we all had helmets. So nobody recognized me. And I also rode with, it's a cycling club.
Yeah.
It began as a black cycling club in Oakland. And then eventually became what they now call multicultural or something like that. But anyway, there was also a grouping of black women within the club called the Good Body Girls.
Okay. Were you part of that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We used to do the long ride with the club every Saturday. On Monday we did a recovery ride, which was kind of flat. And then on Wednesday, we did climbing. We would go from the flatlands in Oakland all the way up to Skyline, if anybody knows it. So,
I love that. We share that in common. I love to cycle. I do a lot of bike tours. I've gone on Highway 1 from Oregon to the Bay, so we got more to talk about.
right, from San Francisco down to Monterey every year at the end of the season.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Yeah, yeah. Again, I guess just to connect, you know, our bodies are a part of this revolutionary work. We must tend to that too. We must tend to our hearts, our spirits, and our bodies. Oftentimes we neglect that, but you know, just connect and get back to what it means to be an embodied revolutionary. So there's some things that we know. You are from the South. You're from Birmingham. You're a feminist. Once, yeah, there's some Birmingham, well, Alabama folks in here. Once a Once a communist, now anti-capitalist. You can talk more about that. A prison abolitionist. You're fluent in French?
Well, I'm still a communist.
Okay.
But I spell it with a small c rather than a capital C.
We love it. I wanted to get some clarity about this. One of my questions that I have is that one thing that's been really evident around your politic is your commitment in saying, just really full-throated, we must be anti-capitalist. And in particular that for black folks, that capitalism will never work for us. So I'm really curious if you can talk about your journey around becoming an anti-capitalist and even becoming where you are now, a lowercase letter C communist.
Well, you know, it wasn't that much of a journey.
Yeah.
because my mother was really fortunate to meet a group of Black communists in the projects in Birmingham when I was, maybe 6 months old or something like that. And so for virtually all my life, I've been aided by those who had a vision that was a lot more, a lot more powerful than the vision I could have had at that time. It's so funny. I did join the Communist Party eventually when I was in my early 20s. But I hadn't joined the Communist Party before that because I kind of considered the Communist Party a little, not radical enough because they were my parents' friends. and I have to tell you, I've been mentioning this, my mother's best friend, whose name is Dorothy Burnham, who is still alive, and we just celebrated her 110th birthday.
Mentioned Dorothy yesterday. Yeah, it's amazing.
So, and she's still a communist.
Yeah, so that's pretty incredible to have that early grounding, to be able to orient and to be able to suss out what so many of us are really trying to suss out, that capitalism is a harm, it's a death, fuels death and destruction, and us as Black people in particular, and Black feminists specifically, must adopt an anti-capitalist politic, whether it's towards socialism or communism, because it really helps us understand our relationship to labor, to the land, to planet, and to each other. So I just think that's so important, and people have really looked to you for helping to understand that, and have maybe even discovered it for the first time in engaging with your work.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that people could see themselves as involved in struggles for liberation and not be opposed to capitalism.
Right.
Capitalism is racial capitalism.
Right.
The foundation of capitalism was slavery, colonialism. So how can we assume that it is okay for a certain number of people to monopolize the wealth that is socially produced, and that the people who are actually involved in the production of the wealth have nothing.
Right.
So I think that we want a world where people have the capacity to fulfill themselves, where they don't have to pay in order to be physically or mentally well. Healthcare should be free. They don't have to pay to get an education. Education from kindergarten all the way up to the postgraduate level should be free for everyone. And it seems to me that you don't have to be that smart to recognize that.
Right. It truly is, and I think that there's so many attempts to privatize our lives, to have control over everything, and I'm really thinking about this current moment. And a question that really came up for me is, I really love your assessment around what do you think the role of Black feminists and Black feminisms is in combating fascism and authoritarianism?
Oh yeah. Yeah, here we are in a moment that is clearly fascist. I don't. In the 70s, in the election of Richard Nixon and people like that, we used to talk about impending fascism. But I think we're right in the middle of it now. And But because we're in the middle of it doesn't mean that it will always be this way. I think, one of the problems that we face, especially in this country, is that we're not encouraged to have a vision of history. We're not encouraged to recognize that things always change. They never remain the same. They can get worse, but they can also get better. So I think Black feminists, and of course we have expanded that, the meaning of Black feminism, because I always point out, I was reluctant to identify as a feminist early on, because I thought feminists were bourgeois. I thought feminists were mostly white, and that they were only interested in rights for themselves, that they wanted to have what the men had, and that they weren't necessarily interested in revolutionary transformation. But precisely because of the emergence of Black feminism and women of color feminism, let's not forget that Chicana feminism played a major role in defining what liberatory feminism might look like. And so I think that Black feminists, whatever gender they might be, because I don't think feminism is gender designation. And what's also interesting is the expansion of gender, which we never could have imagined, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. So I think it's, let me say this. What really made me feel fulfilled was the fact that so many Black feminists have taken the lead in the struggle to create solidarity for Gaza and Palestine. And I say this because the mark of Black feminism is not struggling only for oneself, not struggling within a kind of narrow identitarian frame, but it's about, as they say in Brazil sometimes, when Black women rise, the whole world rises with us.
Absolutely. I think what I see really evident in your ethic as a revolutionary is this practice of finding the I in the we, meaning you may engage in work that you may never personally benefit from, but you know that it's forwarding the advancement of all people, right? So transliberation is vitally important for me and my survival, not because I am trans, right? And I think that's a really important, I just revisited a lot of your works to be in conversation with you, and I was just really thinking about how you got involved in so many issues as a young person. I really feel like you were able to show up and work on issues not because you were necessarily personally impacted, but because you could see the connection to the freedom of all. And I'm curious how you were able to develop that as a politic, as a way to do this revolutionary work.
I don't know if I have a good answer for that question, because it's always just seemed totally natural to me.
Yeah.
And I think that, the fact that I was exposed very early to people who were internationalists, who taught me that it was as important to support struggles unfolding in other parts of the world, in Africa, in Cuba. The Cuban Revolution was the first real revolution I experienced. And it never occurred to me to ask, whether as a Black woman, I should be supporting the Cuban Revolution. Of course, there are lots of black folks in Cuba, but that wasn't necessarily the reason. It was because here was a relatively small population in this part of the world willing to stand up to the U.S., willing to build socialism under conditions that involve the absolute effort of the U.S. government to destroy them. And so I identified with them. I mean, I think that nowadays we tend to consider identity as something that's given, that's already there, but not as something that is developed and something that is forged, something that is political, rather than biological.
Absolutely.
And so it has just never occurred to me to raise those kinds of questions, because I think the we is primary. And growing up in a capitalist country like the U.S., we are taught that the I is primary.
Right.
And that we have to build community. Community is that which rises to the possibilities that we ourselves inhabit. Without community, we are nothing.
Absolutely.
And so, growing up in the South, where we, always had to depend on each other. We didn't have the luxury to ask questions about ourselves as isolated individuals. It was always, lifting up the community.
It's vitally important right now. I think about what you're offering about community right now, and I think it was fueled by COVID. A lot of people feel deeply isolated and feel building community feels really difficult and hard. And I actually do believe that a Black feminist superpower that we must practice is community building. It means we have to, and I do believe that online community is real, but I really think it's important that we prioritize that internal, like the external. I went outside, I met my neighbor, I know their name, we give each other stuff, they watch me, I watch them, my lights are on in my car, they let me know, I go, just the active building with people, and to really fight the isolation that I think is overwhelming a lot of folks right now. I hear that so much, and I don't know if that's something that you are hearing too, that folks are feeling incredibly isolated.
And I think a lot of that has to do with a kind of individualism that is ideologically cultivated. I mean, I already know, I saw you and I saw Ann online, I've seen you many times. So, we don't have to actually, we can also imagine that community. I often tell the story about how I felt when I first went to jail back in 1970. And I was charged with 3 capital crimes. I was charged with murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy. And so, even though I wasn't guilty of the crimes with which I was charged, I could have at that point been sentenced to death. And so I had a lot of those, what do you call them, the invasive, what is it?
Thoughts?
Invasive thoughts.
Yeah.
My last minutes alive and walking to the death chamber. And I can remember how absolutely terrifying that felt. But as more and more people became involved in the campaign, and as I became aware of the fact that there were vast numbers of people who were struggling for my freedom, people I didn't even know, I began to feel less scared.
Yes.
And eventually I began to feel really strong.
Yes.
And that strength came from that community that I actually had to imagine because I didn't get to see that many people. And I think that, we have to engage in those practices, encourage people to imagine themselves as always in community. That is where our courage comes from.
Absolutely.
That is where our strength comes from.
Absolutely.
We can be afraid and still do the work that's needed.
Yes, it's so vitally important. And in that vein, I think I'm really curious around your thoughts or assessment around the current state of organizing. And yeah, I'm like, tell me straight up, what do you think? Are you like, yo, they just don't have no demands. Where's the power at? What's going on? They just online, but they not building. I want to hear what you think.
I'm going to tell you something, Paris. When I was younger, I remember, and in various organizations, I can remember the older people who assume that you had to be older in order to have the wisdom, in order to have a sense of what was necessary to be done. And those of us who were in our 20s or teenagers, they didn't listen to us. But then there were those who did. I'll never forget, I could tell you the names of the organizers I knew who always asked us what we thought and who took us seriously. And so I said to myself, that is what I want to be like when I grow up. When I get older, and here I am at age 81. Being absolutely amazed by the knowledge and the organizing skills and the work that you all do. And I think, as someone who's devoted my life to teaching as well, what I always do in teaching is say, if you're looking at a text or a comment that somebody's made or a presentation somebody has made, don't immediately go to the negative. First of all, think about what you learned and what's valuable. And against the backdrop of that, then you can propose your negative criticisms. Criticisms aren't always negative. Criticisms can be positive as well.
Of course.
So I want to do the positive first.
Yes, love to hear it.
I just want to tell you how absolutely amazed I am about all the incredible organizing work that young people are doing. Anybody who's under 60 counts as young. My friend Dorothy Burnham, after she turned 100, she referred to people in their 80s as the youngsters. So it's all relative, right? You stand on our shoulders. But precisely because you stand on our shoulders, you can see a lot further than we can. And I'll never forget that. And of course there are going to be mistakes. There have to be errors. The only way there are no errors, no mistakes, is if you're not doing a damn thing at all. So we learn from those errors. And yeah, I have some criticisms, but in general, I am just so impressed that I smile all the time. And especially now, given the situation in Gaza and in Palestine more broadly, but also what's happening in the Congo and what's happening in the Sudan. Because, I always, wanted to see that kind of political emotion develop. And it seems like it took us a while, but we're here. And as dismal as things appear to be, and as, what's his name?
Which one?
All of them.
All of them.
Yeah, I like to call him, what's his name? As I said before, that's a moment, that's a historical moment. And we have to, I think more historically. And as people of African descent, we have a duty to think historically. We were produced by history. Our struggle is a struggle about the possibilities that we discover in history. So history is not just about the past, it's about the future. So we can't just only get upset. Of course we're upset about this current predicament. It's horrendous. I've never experienced anything like this in my life.
Okay, say more, yeah. So,
this is the worst moment. And to think that within a short period of time, so much of what Black people and other people in liberatory struggles have fought for has been wiped out. But it doesn't mean that we stop. It doesn't mean that we give up. As a matter of fact, if our ancestors had given up,
absolutely,
and they experienced times that were far more horrendous than what we are experiencing now, if they had given up, we would not be here today. And I think it's our responsibility to create legacies. Because it's not just about us now, it's about what's going to be happening 20 years from now. It's about what will be happening 50 years from now. And I think that is the framework in which we ask ourselves, what do we do now to guarantee that that legacy lives on?
Absolutely, I agree wholeheartedly with you. So I appreciate you. We're like, we're still working, we're doing good solidarity work. Did you give us the critique yet? Because I want to hear, I think we all do. What's some of the things? And again, I think we have critiques from, maybe back in the day, around gender, sexuality, and you share those same critiques. But I think as someone who is coexistent.
Let's talk about it.
Yes, I have a question to hear about it. Let's talk about voting. Let's do it.
That's a critique that I have.
Yes, let's talk about it. Yes.
I'm sorry. But there's often a tendency to disengage voting from the political process. And to think about voting as this very individualistic thing. That we have to do what our heart tells us to do. That we're not engaged in a struggle that involves vast numbers of people. That we're not engaged in a struggle that requires us to think about the long term as opposed to this moment of holding your nose and voting for. It's. How can I put this? I've been accused. That people.
I know. No, but I know.
I try to vote collectively, not by myself as an individual. And I try to use the vote along with others in a way that is going to bring more possibility for us in the future.
Yes.
It's not about, there's no way I can vote for this person who has failed to demonstrate that the war in Gaza needs to end. I think as feminists, as Black feminists, we learn that you can do more than one thing at the same time. And I've been thinking that where would we be if, what's his name, hadn't been?
I think about that too. It's a consistent thing.
Not that I thought Kamala was going to be our best president. I mean, never have I embraced that idea. But what I thought, along with many others, was that our position, our predicament is better if we get to choose the person we fight with. If we get to choose our adversary.
Yes. And the thing that I think you're maybe not saying is that some of us who took that position were, our Black feminism was called out. Or like, are you really a Black feminist? Are you really a revolutionary? And I'm so curious how people could come to that assessment, because from my assessment, I share your assessment. We are taking the information that we have, we're thinking about this collectively, because we're trying to choose our opponent. And I think that we have to think that way. Though the weight of revolution oftentimes has been put on Black people in the United States, we are only 13% of the population. And so while we are incredibly powerful, they will always outvote us, right? Unless we organize them and have a plan and have a way. So yes, I think about electoral politics, the role of the revolutionary with electoral politics. I too want a third party. I want 17 parties, right? I want ranked choice voting. I want everything, right? And the assessment that we have is that we got to build a lot more power to make that possible. That's my vantage. What do you think?
I totally agree with you, Paris. But I also want us to broaden our sense of what counts as politics in this country. No president, no elected official has ever really transformed this country. It doesn't happen because of who's in office. It happens because of the people who go out into the streets and make demands. Every major change that has happened is because of that.
Absolutely.
But we somehow pretend that it's the person in the office of the presidency who's going to change the world. Well, change the world for the worse, yeah, that can happen. But in terms of any kind of progressive moment, that happens not because of who is elected. It happens because of mass movements. It happens, because of the kind of work that's being done right now to organize people.
Right. And I think that's really vitally important, is that we must be building mass movement. And I think I've been in this, a little bit of a tight spot. I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina. We're both from the South. And I was raised, and my mama's here. She's like right up there in the red. So I travel with my mom. She comes with me. And so Greensboro really raised me deep. And so movement work has been really vitally important to me. And I think about the power and importance of movement. And I started this work through reproductive justice, and at the time it was all about women of color. You actually could not say Black women. It was like, everything was women of color, and I get it, because it was a political intervention. I think that Black feminists offered. I think women of color in its time, it actually can be really powerful. But it was playing out with a lot of racialized and anti-Black dynamics and politics that people were not willing to call out and interrogate. So I've been really I just want to be building Black projects. This is Black Feminist Future. And I think a lot of folks in this space may have some of that burn of not being able to just work and focus on Black people. Now, commitment is still there, but I've been really thinking about, in order to build mass and build left, we only 13%? Now, we are the global majority, there's no doubt about that, so I'm always thinking about how we build transnationally. But as a global, being in the global north, we do have responsibility. How do we build mass movement? For me, I want to build a mass 21st century left feminist movement. And I'm thinking we're gonna have to build cross. And I know that makes people, it makes me feel a little nervous at times. How do we navigate wanting to, I know people are like, what are you talking about? Give free ain't gonna just be for us. I didn't say that, right? But I'm curious about your thinking around to build mass movement at this time, because I actually think that's what we're gonna have to do to build base. How do we as Black feminists, with our learnings from what it's meant to be in diverse coalitions, be in multiracial spaces, contend with building with others?
Well, you know, my experience since I left Birmingham, ended up in New York, and I spent some years in Europe. So I worked with people of all racial backgrounds. And I've come to recognize that we don't have to give up the Black in order to do that. And as a matter of fact, the Black movement historically has not been a movement of only Black people. And I think we have to hold on to that. Vast numbers of people who were not necessarily Black in terms of their racial background recognize the importance of engaging in struggle for Black liberation. Yes. And that's because, as we noticed, as we argued during the Black Lives Matter era, that if Black people are free, then everyone is free.
Right, absolutely.
And there are people who are not Black who recognize that it is in their interest to support the Black liberation movement, because that is how we move toward the kind of democracy that will bring justice and equality for all. And not, when I say democracy, I'm not talking about democracy. I'm not talking about bourgeois democracy.
Right.
I'm talking about a democracy that's also about that's also economic democracy. That it's a socialist democracy.
Absolutely, yeah. It's nothing to do with that Democratic Party. It's around how do we have people actively participating and shaping their day-to-day lives and having people involved and hearing from folks. I think a lot about, you've been mentioning something that's really been vital for Black feminists, which are the genocides that we are enduring, facing, watching, oftentimes feel unable to move around, whether it be in Sudan, Congo, Palestine, in Haiti. And you said that that was some of the positive feedback you can give our movement right now, that you really have been seeing Black feminists, Black people be on the forefront of this movement. And I'm curious, I think, just reflecting, you have a whole book around From Ferguson to Palestine. This has been really key and important to your politic and your political development. And I'm curious if you can share with us, how did you get there? How did understanding genocide, the role it plays, in particular Palestine, in your political trajectory?
Well, I've been involved in efforts to generate solidarity for Palestine since I was an undergraduate. I went to a Jewish university, Brandeis. And so I always point out that I was introduced to this Palestinian struggle by my Jewish classmates, and that also the internationalism that I see emerging during this period is something that as a communist, because, communism is not about changing the world in one place.
Right.
It's about, transforming the social relations on the entire planet. And so, we have to be internationals. Workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. And as Black people in this country, we know how much the struggle against apartheid in South Africa meant to our struggle in this country. We would not be where we are now if we had not fully engaged in the effort to end apartheid in South Africa.
Yes.
And so I've come to have a similar relationship with Palestine. Not me personally. When I say I'm talking about my comrades. That Israel represents a threat to the future of the planet.
Absolutely. Yes.
And it's so interesting, isn't it, that they're using anti-Semitism, they're weaponizing anti-Semitism, and the state of Israel is always trying anti-Semitism. But my history with struggling against anti-Semitism has been always in connection with struggling against racism. Because, as much as I learned about Palestine early on, I also learned that the first white people I ever knew in Birmingham were Jewish. And the first allies that Black people had were Jewish allies because they were also the target of white supremacy. Our homes and churches were bombed in our communities, and synagogues were bombed by the white supremacists as well at the same time. So I grew up with a sense of the interconnectedness of anti-Semitism and racism. And then also that progressive Jews have been the ones who have been in the leadership of the struggle to forge solidarity with Palestine. Right now we see Jewish Voice for Peace, right?
Yes.
They took the lead
Yes.
very early, after, in October 2023. And so, I think that we have to be able to imagine ourselves as global citizens.
Yes.
And the one thing I was going to say about Palestine was when I was in jail, there were movements all over the world for my freedom. I mean, I was the beneficiary of those movements, and it consolidated my sense that internationalism is absolutely essential. We can't just be by ourselves. As Toni Morrison said, the whole purpose of freedom is to free someone else.
Yes, absolutely.
Freedom does not survive if it is monopolized by one group, which is what the state of Israel is doing. I mean, if you look, when have you ever heard of Israel expressing solidarity with any other struggling group in the world?
Right.
They only talk about themselves. They're narcissistic, self-centered. And that is not the nature of freedom. The nature of freedom is to be open and to expand itself and to offer itself to others.
Absolutely.
And so,
we're not Black feminists because we want to be the ones that we want to control and oppress others. We do this because this is a freedom project where we want others to be getting free with us. And so I think as we And also we want to free our own people. That's why we talk about Palestine and Congo and Sudan and Haiti, because oftentimes we need to uplift all that's happening, right? And I think we need to have clear demands, especially here in the global north, to really say this is how we can use our location here in the United States, inside the empire, to be forcing, to be moving. And it's really, really, really important that we are involved. I saw an article, you were doing a talk recently where you said, I still want a revolution. And I was thinking, yes, me too. I think you were in conversation with, I can't remember who, but you were in Chicago.
Somebody.
Yes, somebody. And I was thinking, me too, that you were like, yes, I still want a revolution. So I want to hear about the revolution you want to see.
Okay. I can't remember when I said that. But I always want a revolution. You know, I've been thinking about that question a little more deeply. And I've recognized that we've kind of internalized this notion of revolutionary change as happening when a government is overthrown, right? And there's sort of a moment when the revolution happens. The clocks stop, everything changes.
Right.
And of course, there are many other people who've written about and talked about revolutions that are ongoing,
Yes.
that do not happen at one instant, but rather unfold over time. And I've started to recognize that so much has changed in this country in my lifetime.
Yes.
Of course, I'm not satisfied with the changes that happen because we need so much more. But if we reflect on the changes that had happened, who could have imagined an event like this happening?
Yes.
When Erica and I were, working in the Black Panther Party in the 1960s. I think it's really important to look back and seriously take note of the fact that this is a radically different place.
Yes.
And it's only radically different because people have been struggling,
Yes.
one generation after the other generation. The structural change hasn't happened.
Yes.
And that was on the verge of being addressed in 2020.
Yes.
That was what was so threatening to the powers that be in this country when vast numbers of people began to recognize that racism was structural, that it wasn't about white people not liking black people or Latinx people or whatever. It was built into the system, and that was an amazing moment. And I don't think we have recognized that really was the beginning of a revolution in this country that can be compared to radical Reconstruction. And it's not strange, of course. It's but the counter-revolution immediately began to shut down the possibilities. I'm using counter-revolution in the same way that W.E.B. Du Bois uses it in Black Reconstruction. When he sees the radical Reconstruction as the beginning of a revolutionary moment that could have changed, not only the situation for people who were formerly enslaved, but which could have changed the whole, which could have overturned the whole capitalist system.
Yes.
That is why very quickly they began to organize the counter-revolution.
Yes.
And this is a counter-revolutionary period we're in. Sometimes the counter-revolution happens before the revolution has a chance to develop. And that is exactly what we are experiencing right now.
Yes.
And I also want to say that we who are the activists, we who want the change, we who see ourselves as among those who are bringing about change in this country, we fail to recognize that we have that power. And so in a sense, some of this is our fault. We did not make plans for what we were going to do. Once we were responsible for the largest demonstrations in the entire history of this country happening in the summer of 2020.
Yes.
More white people demonstrated against racism, and I'd like to point out that that moment was particularly important because we didn't then know how COVID was transmitted. And the fact that so many people went out into the streets at possibly the risk of losing their lives, that was the revolutionary moment.
It was. I don't think we give it enough credit for how revolutionary it was. So many people, everyday people, right?
Absolutely.
Not just us who we get to do this, we get a salary for it. Everyday people were out in the streets. Globally, it was 26 million people took action in defense of Black lives. It was powerful. Yeah, and I think about that image of you at a protest in Oakland with the Black Power fist in the air. And it was so powerful and reinvigorating that people know that, that you see us and we see you. And I'm really thinking about, I oftentimes think if the leadership, if they were men, if people would give them more credit, right? That it's really easy, or because it was decentralized, because it was really like, well, who's the leader? Who's the leader? And actually the leader are a lot of Black feminists on the front line, yes.
And a lot of Black queer women.
Black queer women, Black trans folks on the front line. I know in Atlanta where I'm based, incredible fierce organizing by Black queer and trans folks on the front line. And that's actually how BFF got started, was because, so many people, I was seeing Black feminists responding to the deaths and murders of Black men and boys, which were important. And when we were being murdered, Black girls, women, trans folks being murdered, couldn't even get a huddle of people, right? And so, in righteous rage, acknowledging that so much, 2020 is, and I think so many of y'all were involved in that, right? Were y'all in the streets? Giving your time, your energy. It was really important, and I think about it.
And those who weren't on the streets
Right.
were glued to the television,
Exactly.
social media.
Talking to
Everybody
families.
was involved.
That's right.
And afterwards, all of the corporations started to do the DEI stuff. And, now we're put in a position where we have to defend DEI, and I thought DEI was not nearly radical enough.
Exactly. You're like, we have to take up for this thing, but I didn't think she was doing enough. Absolutely. Did you ever think that you would ever hear abolish the police as popular or defund the police?
Well, see, that was also the revolutionary dimension of those massive demonstrations in the summer of 2020. And I know that, with all of my comrades who did, abolitionists, suddenly, most people didn't even know what that meant. And suddenly it becomes like, everybody's embracing abolition. And, that was the moment, a lot of things you see in retrospect. That was the moment when we should have done a lot more to challenge the police, because from that moment, they decided to make a counter effort. And that's why you have cop cities all over the country.
Absolutely.
But this is how revolutions often happen. It doesn't mean that we give up. It just means that we become more aware of the extent to which white supremacy and carceral logics are inscribed in the very fabric and the structures of this country. But we can't give up, because I think that it hasn't yet been decided what the outcome is going to be. What we are witnessing by the conservatives is this a really frantic effort to gather all of the institutions, and especially the educational institutions, and bring them under their control. But it's not decided what the final outcome of this ideological struggle will be.
So we must fight, we must organize, right? Because it's not decided, it's not a given. They may be doing this, but it is not, we cannot give up, y'all. We must commit to this, even when it's daunting. So you're right, it's not been determined, and we still in this, right? Y'all still in it? So we have some questions from the audience. This is oftentimes something that folks are curious about, and from your vantage, around how to bridge intergenerational differences while doing the work of getting free.
You should respect your elders. We learn that, don't we?
Yes.
But you also need to talk back and speak up. Respect doesn't mean that everything the elder, including myself, says is correct. And those of you who are, like I said, sometimes I'm just so amazed that I, look at younger people, using with such facility the language that we struggle so hard to try to figure out. And it's like they're groping towards an understanding, and now you just take it and you run away with it and go somewhere entirely different. And that's the way it's supposed to be. I think that it's not so much, maybe there are some younger people who could use a little talking to. But I think the work has to be done with older generations as well. To recognize that things change. The world is not the same as it was 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And you need youthful energy to be able to allow us to understand what this world is about now. Things that we have to really work hard to learn, you take for granted. And so that's why young people are always in the forefront of the revolution. That is why we've seen that on the college campuses, this movement to end the genocide in Gaza has taken off. Because that's what young people are supposed to be doing. And older people sometimes have to struggle to let go of some of the ideas that are holding them back. I know I do. I try to, I'm still not really on social media that much. but I understand its importance,
Yeah.
and I will find out what's on social media, even if I'm not on it myself.
You know what I think? I've been thinking about this a lot, so I agree. I think some of the tension sometimes, not always, is that the younger generations have a desire for some affirmation. Not in a negative way. Do you see what I'm doing, and do you think I'm continuing on the legacy, right? Do you see me? And do you think that I am forwarding our collective freedom, right? And it's not like you do it for a pat on the head, right? But I think sometimes we feel like we're just kind of sometimes throwing spaghetti against the wall. Is it gonna stick? Am I making sense? Is there resonance? And at times it can feel like those who are older, our elders, have some of the fiercest critique of it, of what we're trying to build, but not always like you just did, like you did like a good compliment sandwich, like you're like, you know, I'm gonna tell you what you did really good, but I have some thoughts about that, you know? And I think so many people in this space, I think almost all of us wanna be like, we are continuing in your legacy. And so I think that's some of it, right? I want people to be like, you know, like Billy to be like, Paris is continuing that reproductive justice, or different people, and I don't think I'm alone in that, where it's like, you know what, the movement is strong because I know about 20 to 50 other Black feminists, either by name or just thinking that the movement is in a good place, you know? Has anyone ever told you that before? Or, you know, what do you think about that?
Well, you know, I consider myself as someone who's learning now.
Yeah.
Learning from, you know, all of the amazing things that have happened. I'm impressed because, like I said, we didn't really know what we were talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, we thought we might, but you all have taken it somewhere else, and that is what is supposed to happen. Like I said, sometimes I just sit back and smile.
Yes.
Maybe I would have never imagined this.
Right.
But in this country especially, we're taught to be really possessive.
Yeah.
And so the older people are the ones who have the experience, who are the veterans, and they're the ones who are supposed to have the last word. And that's not true.
Yeah.
It's younger people who should have the last word, because they are much closer to the future that we're fighting for.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm more than willing to step back, and more than willing to, I mean, I spend half my time, maybe all of my time, trying to learn what's new.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, we've taken you this far, and now it's time for you to take over.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're gonna keep taking it. Yeah, did y'all hear our charge?
And those of us who are older are learning things that we could never have imagined would be central to the whole process of liberation. I mean, if anybody had told us 50 years ago that we would be talking about, you know, more than two genders,
I know.
that would have been bizarre. But now, of course, the work that the trans movement has done is it's not central only to issues of gender, but it's central to issues of ideology more broadly. That is to say, ideology defined as those things that we take for granted, that which we consider to be normal. And oftentimes we have to be in a position of challenging that which appears to be most normal, you know, most natural, that is what we have to learn how to shed. That is what we have to learn how to question.
Yes. What are you learning right now? You mentioned social media, but is there anything that you're like, I am being sharpened and honed right now, how your politic is evolving?
Yeah. And this is the beginning of the conversation. But I'm really interested in, what used to be called the animal liberation. And one of my former students wrote this absolutely brilliant book that is called The Omnivore's Deception. And it's about the capitalist animal agriculture movement. And not only the ways in which we have been compelled to see meat as the center of our diets, but also about how we don't see animals as our kin.
Right, it's true.
And we are animals.
Yeah.
We inhabit this planet together.
Yes.
And there's a lot that animals have to teach us. Because, as I like to point out, animals all use the earth. When you think about ways in which, bees make honey, but they don't destroy it the way humans do.
Right.
And human production under capitalism has meant destruction.
Yes.
I'm interested. Did I tell you the name of the author of the book?
No, not the tell us the author.
The author's name is John Sanbonmatsu. 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 Yeah. It's called the Omnivore's Deception. Some of you who know the field may have read Michael Pollan's The Omnivore's
Dilemma.
The Omnivore's
Yes.
Dilemma. So his book is called the Omnivore's Deception.
Yes. I love that you are consistently learning and pushing yourself. Because, to be honest, that takes courage. It means admitting that you don't know it all. It means admitting that there's more to sharpen and more to hone. And
Once you stop learning, you die.
Yeah, it's true.
That's it. Isn't that true?
It's true. So, my last question, it's time for us to wrap up. We've been in conversation for a good chunk is, this is a room of Black feminists, and some of us are in our, wanting to become Black feminist revolutionaries, already are Black feminist revolutionaries. What charge do you have for us? What do you want us to leave here today thinking about? What words do you have? You've given us a lot, but are there any final words that you'd like to offer us?
Well, I always shy away from offering words of wisdom, but I do think that we have to, how would I put it, experience the revolution in the process. We have a tendency to say, we have a tendency to think that our struggles are the journey, and freedom is the destination. We're constantly referring to when we get free. And I love the theme of the gathering, because getting free is engaging as we are engaging in the moment. That is, freedom is a process, it's a journey, it's not a destination. And it changes over time. Our notion of freedom today is very, very different from what civil rights activists thought freedom was, back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And so to be open, not to get to the point of being rigid, and be willing to question our own ideas, the ideas that we've lived with, sometimes for decades. So because we never know. We don't really know what the future is going to bring. Just as no one could have prepared us for this moment, 50 years from now, when a lot of you will still be around, you'll be thinking back to this, this period, which is going to prove, I think, to be pivotal. And also, finally, something that I've been thinking about a lot is the way in which we assume that when we make community, it must be with those who are like us. And that what we have to create is likeness. We have to strive to transcend all of the differences, or to try to, we have to strive to create a unity that overcomes, that's another word that we use, overcomes the differences. And I think that it's sometimes the differences that hold the key. Why can't the differences be that which brings us together? Why can't we take difference as that which allows us to learn? So don't be afraid of working with somebody who does not exactly hold your politics in the same way. It's going to take a lot to get through this period. And the only way we're going to get through this period is by creating a movement that will be able to challenge what's his name and all of the what's his names. But I'm convinced that we can, because we've done things in the past that nobody would have believed we were capable of doing. And so I guess I want to lead with hope. We have to create hope. Hope is what we need. And Mariam Kaba, I always refer to her notion of hope as a discipline. It's something that we create, that we generate. And that is our job right now, to generate hope, to make it possible to imagine a better world tomorrow.
Yes.
And that's it.
That's amazing. We all